So, welcome back once again to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today, because of some time restrictions, we're going to be doing a battle that's on the slightly shorter scale of things in terms of the time, but in terms of the overall size, I feel as though this battle is going to be incredibly bloody, incredibly quickly. And part of the reason for this is a map I have played on before. I'm not entirely sure what the name of it is. You can see the mountain range near the sea, but the reason is the deployment zones are very, very close to one another. As you can see from this, you can see Lothlorien and Isengard sort of facing off almost nose to nose based on how close the deployment zones are, which means, of course, there's going to be an immediate engagement between the two armies. There's going to be no manoeuvring, there's going to be no option to be passive in a battle like this unless you deploy further back, which is, to be fair, what some armies have done to try and give them a little bit more breathing room. But we'll see if that works, because it is going to be, as I said, a very, very bloody battle very, very quickly. And once again, this is a battle that was sent to me, I believe, by ISEN. Indeed it was. So this is kind of, again, a sort of pick and mix of various factions. There's going to be no real theme to this battle, which I know some people aren't the biggest fan of, but overall, the battles that ISEN and Eclipse have sent me in this sort of bunch of 5 or 6 that I've gotten over the past week or so are bound to be of high quality, which I think is slightly more important, to be fair, than a unified theme. There are battles I do have that do have a unified theme, to be fair, but I'm going to be doing those throughout the course of next week, hopefully in and amongst a bit of Bannerlord. But we'll see. By the time this one releases, Bannerlord may have already released as well. I'm not entirely sure of what the timescale is going to be. But we'll go through the blue team first and foremost, and we shall start off on the far right-hand side of the minimap here, to where there are hidden units by the looks of things. Indeed. Oh, no, I'm just blind. And it is going to be, once again, Eclipse 2500, who is going to be playing as Rohan again. So interesting. Maybe he's trying to experiment with Rohan a little bit to try and really try and sort of get down some good compositions for them, because, of course, it's easy to just say Rohan can just mass up a bunch of cavalry, have a token infantry force, and that's about it. But the content of these units is going to be very, very important. The Rhudaur skirmishers, I think, are going to be an ever-present for Rohan on a more open field battle, because they do represent Rohan's best unit to deal with cavalry close up, other than the knights, of course, but they're going to be more limited in terms of numbers. The javelins will be able to do decent damage to mounted riders at range to soften them up, and then in melee they pull out those axes and become pretty decent melee cavalry as well. Having said that, they will need a bit of support. Like, they're certainly not world beaters in melee against other decent cavalry, to be sure. But Rohan, with their higher focus on lance cavalry, they do have less options in this regard than Khand do. So the Rhudaur skirmishers are going to be a very common pick, I think. Riders of the Fold, which are of course the slightly stronger unit of horse archers that Rohan have available to them. Little shield on the back, thicker chainmail, and just all around slightly higher quality than the Eastmark horse archers. So if you want to invest a little bit more, if you want to really flex your muscles in a skirmish fight, you do need to bring the Riders of the Fold to sort of pad out your mounted riders a little bit more. The rest of his army, though, does look as though he's gone for a little bit more infantry. He has got the Sons of Yorl in the background as well, but for the most part, Eastmark spearmen and axemen, the spears with their javelins. Eastmark axemen I've never been a particularly big fan of, because in terms of their combat effectiveness, they are not that great, and their lower unit size also adds into that. So very similar to the Eastmark spears in front of them, to be honest with you. I've never been the greatest fan of these units, because if they're going to be lower tier like this, they kind of need to have more numbers to make them worthwhile, especially the axemen, because at least the spears do have those javelin volleys. Eastmark axemen, though, they just seem to get run over far too easily for my liking, but we'll see in this battle whether they're able to do anything useful against the foes that are across on them, although that being Mirkwood, I have my doubts. Then we have some Helmingast back here. Again, in terms of a skirmish fight, normally they're pretty good, but against Mirkwood, I think they're just going to be outclassed in terms of sheer damage. But it looks as though what Eclipse wants to do is move sideways rather than forwards anyway, considering the superior terrain that Mirkwood already have. Medicel Guard, they really need to stay out of the arrow fire if they can help it. They may have multiple HP, but they want to be preserved as much as possible in this fight, because their javelins are so effective, and of course they're strong in melee. Combination of Westmark Infantry and Westmark Marshals is a pretty good one, to be fair, though. The Westmark Infantry, of course, far stronger than the Eastmark Axemen, able to stand up for themselves in melee against much greater foes, and of course the Westmark Marshals are there for the sheer damage that they offer. And there's also some Shield Maidens of Rohan, which, to be fair, if they're getting close against Mirkwood, will do a very good job, but it's unlikely that Mirkwood would let that happen. They'll probably be one of the first targets they go after. Then we have Viper Action, going to be playing as Lothlorien. Of course, they and Isengard are very, very close indeed. So they're going to have to engage immediately. I'm not sure whether Viper Action was expecting Isengard to maybe deploy back a little further, but his archers are right on the front line alongside these March Warns of the Wood. I feel as though he's in massive trouble right from the off here, because his deployment suggests that he wants to skirmish initially. That is not going to happen. If Isengard, if Mr. Sneakman wants to, he can move forward and really disrupt Lothlorien's plans quite a lot if he's not careful. Spears of the Wood are here to maybe try and cover a retreat, but yeah, Lothlorien are going to be scrambling a bit here, I think. Riders of the Goldenwood here with their Silver Thorns, obviously very, very damaging, but there are only so many of them that are capable of dealing that damage quickly. Blades of the Wood, the rest of the Lothlorien army is almost certainly hiding around here, but yeah, we shall see. Actually, no, the rest of the Lothlorien army is actually way back here, so a very weird deployment, I have to say, from Viper action, because I think the best he can hope for at this point is to try and retreat to this choke point here, but that will leave Rohan all on their own to be slaughtered, so I'm not a fan of his deployment at all here, actually. Elder Council here with their javelins, Lorenan Spearman, Watchers of the Golden Wood, Lorenan Axemen, back there we've got some pikes and some sword masters as well, and also some Kindred of Celeborn, so a very comprehensive archer force if nothing else. Then Sin's army, he's going to be playing as Harad, as he did in the last battle as well. Haradrim Spearmen are here. He's got some Southron warband, so spears, basic arch units of Southrons and Haradrim, making up a decent portion of the front and the flanks to engage initially against Rhudaur. So very, very similar philosophies from Harad and Rhudaur, to be fair. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. Got some dismounted Serpent Guard, which, to be fair, Rhudaur don't have an equivalent unit to, especially not with the armour upgrade. In terms of line infantry, Harad definitely have a leg up over Rhudaur, but Rhudaur have it in other ways as well. So Southron Pikemen as well with the armour-piercing phalanx, not too useful against Rhudaur anyway, to be honest with you, but it's a phalanx nonetheless. Mahood Beast Hunters back here, so javelin to javelin. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. Trollmen, Southron Warband, Champions of Nafra as well, and then he has his cavalry wing. He has gone for the 2 Serpent Guard and the Black Serpents once again, as well as the Hashari Shadows. The main difference from last time, of course, is this time he's gone for the Mumakil, which, considering there is a more open feeling to this battle, is a little bit more understandable, because obviously he's going to be able to run through lines potentially, but he needs to be really careful because he's going up against 2 factions. I mean, Dorwinion do have javelins, but especially Rhudaur, they're going to be able to focus them down very quickly if they're not careful. And then finally, we have Karnd, played by Mighty Mirko, over on this side of things, of course. He's gone for... Yep, he's gone for it. He's gone for the full Karnd cavalry army. This is the sort of thing which Karnd and Rohan can do, to a certain extent Dol Amroth as well, albeit you do hamstring yourself a little bit more so as Dol Amroth, to be honest with you. But Mighty Mirko, can he keep control of all of this cavalry? Again, this is a double-edged sword. You have a lot of mobility. It can be a bit of a panic for the enemy when they see all of this cavalry coming towards them, but if you don't use them effectively, it is a bit of a paper tiger, to be honest with you. We shall see. Wain Riders of Karnd here on the front, so the most basic unit of Karndish melee cavalry. They don't have a shield. They're decent in melee against other cavalry, of course, as most Karnd's cavalry is, but will they have the ability to get good charges off here onto the Dorwinion force? Because without that big bonus that a Lancer offers you, it's going to be all the more important that you get a good connection with your melee cav. Nurad Retainers, of course, a very, very efficient unit of melee cavalry. Once again, though, melee cavalry is the key here. Brotherhood of the Wain, they can run through enemy lines in much the same way the Mumakil can, albeit in a different kind of way. They're much more easy to bog down. Brotherhood of the Bow, lots of horse archers, I'd imagine. Brotherhood of the Lance, one of the few units of really dedicated lancers that Karnd have, as well as the Variag Cataphracts, of course. Few and far between in the Karndish roster. Nurad Windblades, Chieftain's Vanguard, a lot of horse archers back here. Variag horse archers, nomadic light cavalry. Yeah, the same story on the other side. No armour upgrade on the Variag horse archers either. Yeah, very, very interesting army this, we shall see. I mean, he does have room to manoeuvre, but not that much. I mean, to be fair, as long as Rhudaur and Dorwinion keep their shape, they should be just fine. And Dorwinion do have the ability to zone out cavalry with all of their decent spears and pikes, but have they brought enough of them? Has Chris Almighty prepared for this? We shall see. Alvalan marksmen, they should be able to skirmish with horse archers for a fairly long period of time, but with that many horse archers, we shall see. Alvalan infantry, as well as some pikes in the middle. I think he's probably wishing he brought more spears now at this point, because it's mostly Alvalan infantry. We'll see how well they can do. At the back, we have the elites. We have the Morroquendi Glade Masters and the Alvalan Hammer Guard. And then just over here, we also have a solitary unit of riders that we can see anyway, Morroquendi Glade Lords. I'd imagine Dorwinion probably have some hidden units as well, like Morroquendi Stalkers, but in terms of cavalry, they're going to have to be used very carefully, considering the amount that's going to be coming towards them. Enksvitz playing as Rhudaur, he probably wasn't expecting this either. I mean, to be fair, he is going to be faced with a more standard battle, as it were, at the start, trying to deal with Harad's foot army. But he is going to need to help his ally in Dorwinion, I think, a little bit, because if Harad and Karnd just wash over that army with just pure cav, he needs to help defend his flank a little bit as well. We'll see what Enksvitz does. Dunman Hunters and Spearmen, and Rhudaur Marksmen sort of in the first line, so a very similar idea to what Harad has gone with. Rhudaur Swordsmen and Franadine Pikemen making up the standard line. I would say certainly in terms of pikes that Rhudaur has the advantage over Harad, but again, we shall see if that manifests itself. Dunman Pikes, we have Rhudaur Clansmen and Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters in and amongst here as well. Lots of, upgraded Rhudaur Clansmen and Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters back here. We have the Franadine Nobles as well for a unit of Knights and some Rhudaur Clansmen at the back. Probably some hidden units for Rhudaur as well, but not as many as I'd expect from Dorwinion, to be honest with you, because that's quite a lot of units on the field as it is anyway. And then we shall move across to Isengard, Champions of the White Hand, Coldfell Maidens, some Trolls back here, and of course the main bulk of his army is forwards. So we've got Uruk-hai Pikemen, Half-Orc Baneguard, lots of Uruk-hai infantry as well, Half-Orc Spearguard right on the front, all in loose formation as it stands. He's also gone for some crossbows, of course, and then up on the hill, providing some Overwatch support in a very good position, is the Isengard Ballista. And then finally, we have Mirkwood, Beast Mode on 70. He is going to have some Huntsmen of Amon-Lank, some Bows of Emenduia. He's got some Catapult, some Hiri Ek, some more Hiri Ek. We also have some Wooden Realm Patrol immediately starting to open up, as well as some Hiri Peng, some Elven King's Palace Guard with the armour upgrade. And that's all we can see from Mirkwood. Obviously plenty of ranged units and just standard units in general can hide from Mirkwood, so I'd imagine there's far more of that. So just taking an overall look at this field, I quite fancy the red team here, honestly. Over on this side of the battlefield, certainly, I think Lothlorien's positioning is not going to be sufficient if Mr. Sneakman takes advantage of it and comes forward quickly. I really don't fancy Mirkwood, Lothlorien's position here, to be honest with you. And I feel as though they can really take advantage of that. And over on this side as well, while the blue team, it may very well be a frightening sight for the red team, full cav armies are difficult to use effectively. They can be used effectively, and if Dorwinion panics, they could be quite dominant. Having said that, if Dorwinion just keeps their nerve, gets supported by Rhudaur efficiently, they should be fine. Like, again, this is the sort of thing that it can backfire quite horribly if you bring an army like this. I mean, Khand and Rohan can bring cavalry in the kind of quantities that do make it viable, but I think I prefer doing this with Rohan, to be honest with you, because their lancers can do crippling damage very, very quickly. Whereas Khand, they have to sort of rely on attrition a little bit more, even when they've got a full cav army like this, which can backfire. Although, having said that, Dorwinion haven't got enough spears, perhaps, to be fully comfortable in that position. But without further ado, let's begin. This over here is going to be fairly... I mean, Lothlorien immediately are going to try and move backwards. Isengard, a little bit slow on the uptake there. They need to be ready to move immediately. And the elves are quicker, so they are going to be able to escape from Isengard there, which is a bit of a shame. Isengard did have the potential there to do a lot of damage, but now I think what Isengard can do instead, just send over some token force, make sure Lothlorien can't counter-attack, and then move to cut Rohan off. I think that's going to be key here, because Rohan are in a worse position than Lothlorien ever were. If Isengard just move forward, and they can destroy an entire army here, and immediately you can also see lots of damage being done. Westmark Marshals getting shot. Catapult already firing as well. Bows of Emenduia doing their thing. Carving through the Rohirrim there. Meanwhile over here, again, yeah, this... Well, I think we're already going to have to go down to half speed. This is a sign that Mighty Mirko, to be quite blunt, is not really equipped to be at the helm of a full cav army like this, because he charged forward right into the front of the Dorwinion army, right into the teeth of all of the ranged units, all of the javelins. He even charged into the section of line where pikes were present, which says to me that he wasn't competent enough to take an army like this and use it effectively. And he's going to pay the price for this now, because I feel as though now that he's on the back foot with a full cav army, I really don't think he's going to be able to recapture that. Certainly not with the Khand variant of the full cav army, because again, they do things a little bit more slowly. If you lose momentum with this sort of thing as Khand, I don't think you're going to be able to get it back. And Dorwinion here are almost completely unharmed on the front line. I mean, they have taken some damage from some of the charges, but the vast majority of the casualties here are from the Khandish cavalry. And yeah, that's an absolutely disastrous piece of play there from Mighty Mirko. Very, very poor. And as a result, the blue team probably not in the best shape. I mean, to be fair though, over here as well, Isengard, the window of opportunity is closing here. Like, I think Isengard have dawdled as well. Like, they've been too slow here. Like, they had the opportunity to cut all of this Rohan force off and they've not taken it. They've been too slow. Very disappointing. And a lot of the Rohan force is going to be able to get away. I mean, to be fair, Isengard can still make this work for them. as long as they can pin down enough of these forces to make it worth it. I mean, Westmark Marshal's been left behind. They need to get into as many of these units as they possibly can. Of course, there is always the danger that the Lothlorien do try and counter-attack a little bit, but Lothlorien are also on the assault. Blades of the Wood broken and fighting to the death, so I mean, maybe I am being a little bit harsh on Isengard here, but they are doing some damage. But considering the rather poor position that Rohan and Lothlorien found themselves in the beginning, they really should be able to seize the momentum in a big way in this battle. Coldfell Maidens are over here getting shot by the Lothlorien skirmishers. Meanwhile, back over on this side of things, the disastrous Khandish cavalry assault is now finally being completely turned back. Dorwinion's line still completely intact, that metal wall still doing very well. Meanwhile, Harad and Rhudaur are still involved in this slow skirmish, which was always going to be inevitable at this early stage. But yeah, the blue team will be kind of worried, I think, at this stage. I mean, you can see over here, well, you can't see over here actually, because I think they are hidden. Some Rohan cavalry got in behind the line somehow. You can see over here, oh well, there it is. There's some cavalry anyway. The Red Shields charging downhill into the Greenwood Rangers. I think this was to try and prevent the Rangers from shooting Rohan on the retreat. But of course, in this sort of situation, the Red Shields are going to be isolated and destroyed, and it's an expensive unit to use as a throwaway like that. Everything I see in this battle so far really does point to a red victory. Yeah, I mean, you can see here Rohan's still scrambling to try and get away. If this was the case, I'm quite surprised Rohan didn't deploy a little bit further back on the field over here and try and come around from the shoreline, rather than just trying to go across from this direction. Maybe Lothlorien, Rohan was expecting Lothlorien to maybe put up more of a fight and cover their retreat a little bit more, but in the end the deployment from Lothlorien was so poor that Rohan had to quickly reevaluate that. And you can see actually, yeah, a lot of Rohan's force has been sort of pinned down. Uruk-hai infantry coming forward. I think Mirkwood do need to be a little bit more proactive as well. I think Beast Mode on 70 needs to come forward and help Isengard a little bit here, because Isengard is doing everything right at this stage, but they could run out of steam here, especially if Lothlorien decide to come and help Rohan. And if I were Rohan, I wouldn't be all that impressed with the support that Lothlorien is deigning to give me here, that being pretty much nothing. No infantry units are coming across to try and relieve the beleaguered Rohan force, and it's pretty much Lothlorien's fault that Rohan are in this position in the first place. So, not great for them. Ooh, what's that? Frame drops? There's got to be rangers somewhere, right? That's probably the situation as it stands. Meanwhile, Harad moving forwards. Nurnarian Shoreland Patrol over here, which you don't see an awful lot of at all, to be fair. I mean, you know, considering this is a full Khandish stack, you're going to be seeing all of it. It's pretty much the mounted Nurad infantry. The reason you don't see them quite as much is because they are maybe a little bit too expensive in relation to the Variag Horse Archers for what they offer. Once again though, they're just charging forward and they're charging into spears. Like, I really don't feel as though the Khandish player has covered himself in glory at all here. I think he's been extremely poor. And as a result, in that sort of situation, you always worry for the other team. And Dorwinion, actually, considering the situation they're in, feeling emboldened enough to come forward. Khandish cavalry is coming forward to try and breach the Rhudaur lines, but even if they do make progress, it's only on Dunman units. They will not be all that concerned about that at all. And yeah, I mean, Dorwinion are going to move forwards, maybe try and put some pressure on the flanks. There's still some Khandish cavalry to be concerned with, so they can't afford to get too greedy. And Khan do still have their more important cavalry units, but they really haven't made much in the way of progress thus far. Nomadic light cavalry is shaken. Again, the lowest tier of Khandish horse archers. They are getting in and amongst the Rhudaur archers, to be fair. How long is this going to last? Well, I mean, Rhudaur are a little bit slow on the uptake as well. Engsmith's maybe a little bit too eager to maintain his current formation, and that will be to the detriment of some of his frontal units. It's nothing too important, but again, needless casualties, I would say. Not really to any sort of gain. Westmark Marshals, meanwhile, fighting, doing their best to try and shave away at the Isengard manpower as best they possibly can. I mean, to be honest with you, with the damage that Rohan can do to Isengard in melee in a situation like this, I am surprised that Lothlorien are not sending over any support. I mean, I know that they have a lot of archers and ranged units in general, so trying to go for just pure range support might be their best option. Again, this is another situation, like, well, there goes Rohan's general. I feel as though I've been more critical of most players on the field than I normally would be, but again, Mirkwood is moving now. But Mirkwood, I think, has also been too slow. Like, this is a battle which is going to develop quickly because of the deployment zones, and I feel as though, to give Eclipse some credit, like, he didn't have any choice with what he needed to do. He acted quickly and decisively. It's just, you know, Isengard was able to cut him off eventually. But he didn't really do anything wrong in this situation, but he's holding on for far longer than he has any right to because Mirkwood are just being too slow. I mean, there are those Rohirrim riders over here, but I mean, it's only basic units for the most part. Like, I don't see the Sons of Eorl over here. Hiri Pang are over here. They're getting charged. Yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement in Mirkwood's play as well, I think. I mean, to be fair, the Rohan cavalry is only going to be able to achieve so much in melee against the elves, so maybe they don't have too much to worry about. Dorwinion starting to wrap around. In come the Variag Cataphracts now, charging front on into the Attenmore Shoal Hunters, actually connecting with the charge as well, but taking a volley before they did so, so tit for tat. The Khandish Knights are going to try and bulldoze their way through the line, but there's more spears on the way, and once again, Mighty Mirko's very gung-ho attitude to his cavalry in this fight continues, and he's going to lose yet more of them. More cavalry. Wild. Rhudaur's cavalry coming back over here to try and support, because so they kind of know they're going to win over on this side now. Like, Isengard have completely cut off Rohan, and the final units are being destroyed now. So good for them. I was worried Mr. Sneakman was going to be too slow, but in the end he wasn't. I'm willing to hold my hands up and say I was wrong about that. Hiriek moving forward, zoning out the Rohirrim cavalry. The riders still trying to do their thing. His foot army may very well be completely destroyed at this point, Eclipse, but he still has a part to play. If he can do enough damage to Mirkwood, and if his team can win on the other side of the river that bisects this map, he can still offer something good there. Riddermark skirmishers moving forward, axes out. Hiri Pang are also here, shaken. So a few units are certainly suffering under the weight of this Rohan cavalry. But with a unit like the Champions of the White Hand here, who did manage to catch up to the Sons of Eorl and ultimately defeated them. Sons of Eorl, of course, had seen melee anyway, and it's exactly the sort of fight the Champions of the White Hand are made for. Yeah, now you can see Rohan cavalry starting to rout. So not much of Rohan left at all. Meanwhile, Mumakil here firing their ammunition. Brotherhood of the Bow doing the same. The Haradrim Lancers moving forward. The Hashari Shadows rolling backwards as Dorwinion try to move in here to box in the blue team. And the blue team are now surrounded on all sides, to be fair. If the red team can coordinate from this position, I would very much fancy them to go on to win this battle. Having said that, fanning out in the way that Chris Almighty has against Sin is not a great idea, because he's going to be able to find gaps here and charge unprotected line infantry with lancers. Nandor Glade Guard coming in. They're primarily shock infantry, to be fair, and they're also very, very fragile shock infantry to archers, and the Brotherhood of the Bow and the Hashari Shadows exploiting that weakness very, very soundly. Of course, the problem for Dorwinion here is they need to try and force an engagement in melee, but the problem with doing that is they can't really, because all of the cavalry is the main danger. So they just need to try and move forward, zone out the cavalry where they can. In comes the Alvalan infantry charging into the Brotherhood of the Wain of all things. They're taking a ton of archer fire as well. I'd imagine this is kind of where the Brotherhood of the Wain are going to start to fall away, especially with Morroquendi pikes there. To be fair to Khan, this sort of thing is the sort of thing I'm more willing to forgive, because with a full cavalry army you have so much to micro that you are going to lose some units, but again you can see the frontal assault from Khan's cavalry was not very successful. And more it is going to come down to Sin, because Sin is the only one who hasn't really taken crippling losses so far. Lothlorien, I suppose, as well. But Rohan and Khan have definitely paid a heavy price for the blue team thus far. Brotherhood of the Lance charging in, doing some damage. Rohan and Khan are still able, with the remnants of their cavalry forces, to make a nuisance of themselves at the very least, but that is all they're really going to be able to do. And with Isengard setting up their ballista as well, the densely packed position now that Harad and Lothlorien occupy. You can see there that Hiri Lung taking a ton of damage from Lothlorien skirmishers. Advancing in on this choke point is going to be a risky proposition purely because of that, but I'm surprised the Isengard ballista isn't on flaming shot. It would be far more effective in this situation. You could really do heavy damage to the more important Lothlorien skirmishers, and if as you do that you can then move in. I think that is fairly key here. I think they do need to move in as a unit here, the red team. If they move in one by one, they can be focused down at range, and then when out of ammunition, the blue team can then rely on their skirmishers, particularly with Lothlorien, with how good their skirmishers are in melee, to try and finish them off in melee. Rhudaur, meanwhile, still trying to just sort of put the squeeze on Harad, but this isn't really going to be any decisive blows they're striking. Dorwinion, meanwhile, really, like, this is the sort of situation where Dorwinion, when they're in this position, when they sort of just need to show their resilience, is where Dorwinion can be very effective with all their Elvelen. The problem with doing that, though, is that a lot of their Morroquendi may be a lot less so, and that can be an issue. And you can see that Franadine Nobles are still here, Chieftain's Vanguard trying to charge in, Keldon River Patrol sort of offering themselves up as a meat shield, which, I mean, they will die in that situation. I'm not sure what that was all about. Morroquendi Glaive Masters can charge in now and potentially defeat that cavalry. I mean, Dorwinion don't really have a lot to micro at this point, so they are going to do so, which is good to see. Yeah, there we go. Very nice. Franadine Nobles are going to be able to chase them off as well. Maybe not as much damage as they would have liked, but at least there was some done there. Hammer Guard is still here. Dorwinion just holding position, making Harad feel just that little bit more uncomfortable than they otherwise would. Silverthorn's coming in. The split shot arrow is still going as well. I think this is, to be honest with you, a bit of a mistake. I think Beast Mode is just sending forward individual units to be slaughtered by the Lothlorien skirmishers, which is the exact thing I said they needed to be wary of. Isengard pulling back, perhaps not fancying their chances at crossing just yet. Maybe rightly. I mean, they need to, if they're going to move across, they need to do so in force, quickly. Sending individual units in, such as Mirkwood has done here, is not going to yield anything in the way of results, really. So again, Mirkwood not had a great game either, in my opinion. Been a real contrasting fortunes and performances from the players in the battle today. Sin still has a pretty healthy amount of infantry though, and he is now going to move forward to engage with Rhudaur. In come the Black Wolves, they're going to tear their way through Harad Spearmen very quickly, especially with a charge like that. Phalanx to Phalanx as well, I would back Rhudaur, simply because of the Franadine Pikemen. They make for a far better anchor than the Southron Pikes. Especially with the initial damage being done by the Black Wolves here, that's going to be fairly decisive. And Dorwinion now moving in. I think Rhudaur and Dorwinion have interacted with one another quite well. They haven't sort of shared units that readily, just a few units of cavalry here and there from Rhudaur heading across, but the macro situation, the way that both of these armies have moved, has been good. It has been in tandem with one another, and now Harad are going to have to sort of deal with the situation here. As Rhudaur come in from the side, I mean, Dorwinion don't even need to send forward that many men, to be honest with you. Just a single or maybe 2 units of Elvelen to help, because I can understand that Dorwinion's main focus will probably be on the cavalry, which still beleaguers them. The Haradrim's still here. There is, of course, still the fully healthy Mumakil, which javelins at this point are probably in a short supply at this later stage of the battle. So maybe they can be used with a little bit more freedom, smash and crash around the Rhudaur lines. The Shari Shadows here, do they still have ammo? I think they probably do, right? And they can shoot right down this line. Dorwinion need to be a little bit more aware of the situation. I mean, yeah, they're going to be able to do so much damage here if Dorwinion doesn't stop this. Ooh, boy. Don't you just love Rangers and their ability to just tank frames? We're going to have to leave that section of the battle now. But suffice it to say, if Dorwinion doesn't move quickly, they're going to be in real trouble. Forward come Isengard now. So they're going to move in, try and do the business against Lothlorien. To be fair, with their lower numbers, Lothlorien will be grateful for the fact this fight is happening in a choke point with the nearby support of all their archers, including the Rangers, Cairn Amroth Rangers. Having said that, if Isengard can continue to use their ballista as long as it still has ammunition, they should be able to do some fairly grievous damage to Lothlorien in return. It's been a pretty wild fight so far. Rhudaur, though, well, I say that, Rhudaur are losing on this front line. Down goes some of the Mumakil. They're in the back lines here, but to be fair, the Ferocium Javelins, I think, just fired a volley, and they do have the throne trait, I think. So, hard counter. Serpent Guard wrapping around now, and actually, Rhudaur are in trouble here. Because they only have 1 unit of Javelins that's really able to stop the Mumakil, and the Mumakil here are doing tons of damage to Rhudaur, which will tilt this fight in melee, at the very least, in favour of Harad. Lothlorien are going to hold on to that position over there. Dorwinion are not really in a position that they can... ooh, there goes the ballista though. The tail twists again. They can get some good volleys onto the Harad front line. That will really change their fortunes. Chieftain's Vanguard coming in once again. Brotherhood of the Bow charging in. I will give Khan some credit here in the fact that their army is still somewhat intact, considering the disastrous start they had. they have been a constant nuisance even in spite of that. A lot of players would just give up completely after that. That is not something that Khan have done, and they have still played a part in this battle, which is to their credit. I don't want to sound too harsh on a player that clearly hasn't had the best battle, but they have at least done what they could after a setback. Mumakil here, charging through the Dorwinion lines, and Dorwinion are in no position here. Their formation is a little bit all over the place. Mumakil are going to be able to do a lot of damage here as they continue to charge through, having already done a lot of damage to Rhudaur, getting away from Rhudaur's javelins now as well, so good use of the Mumakil there from Sin. Javelins and melee engagements happening. The Mirkwood catapult firing in. Looks like he actually got more in the way of friendly fire there than anything else though, which is a bad sign. There goes the Rhudaur general in and amongst the Southron pikes. Back come the Mumakil again. Frodrum javelins getting a volley off though, and that will lead to another one of the Mumakil's deaths. They're going to charge forward once again though. The Mumakil have been used well. Like, the Mumakil are a difficult unit to use effectively considering their high cost, but when you do use them, it is very, very satisfying indeed. Meanwhile, Lothlorien continuing to try and hold on. The problem Lothlorien might have here is they only have one unit of pikes, whereas Isengard have many. The trolls are coming in now as well, more reinforcements. Eventually Lothlorien may find themselves losing this engagement. They may have to rely on their high tier skirmishers in melee to try and hold on to this situation. There's also the Riders of the Golden Wood, but I mean, if they can hold on here for a bit longer, I think the blue team are actually going to win over on this side of the river as well. Mumakil coming in. Broken. Mahud Beast Hunters coming forward, and again you can see Rhudaur's army has now been completely destroyed, and with that, with the use of the Mumakil and with the cavalry in behind charging into them, the Serpent Guard now running down their quarries, I think the blue team are in the ascendancy now. I think they're going to win this because I think Dorwinion's assault has come a little bit too late. Rhudaur now isn't there, so Harad can now fully focus on them. And a little bit of friendly fire to boot as well from Mirkwood's catapult. The Kindred of Caliborn firing into the Elvalin Hammer Guard, Lorenan Swordmaster, so Lothlorien coming forward to help out. What's left of all the cavalry still doing their thing. The Mumakil are now running amok, to be fair, so now Sin won't be able to use them. But they've more than done their job here. It's very rare you get to see the Mumakil used as effectively as that, but there it is. The Haradrim Lancers as well, proving their worth. Harad's cavalry is not necessarily the best in melee with other cav forces, in much the same way as Cardalan's. But once you get it moving, quickly moving around the battlefield, very difficult to stop, very difficult to catch. Get them charging in and out quickly, and they can be very, very effective. I really like the look of the Black Serpents as well. In come more split shot. Dorwinion now being overwhelmed. Harad's infantry is looking a little bit battered and bruised. There are still some Blackwolves fighting, but they are going to be victorious here as well. How much will they have? Ooh. Watchers of the Goldenwood shooting down the line, but with the addition of the trolls here, Lothlorien's front line is now faltering. And Isengard and Mirkwood will be able to move forward. I feel as though the downfall of the red team, if they do go on to lose this battle, will simply be they weren't synchronised when they made their moves. Rhudaur moved forward, Dorwinion was delayed a little bit behind them, the force across the river couldn't break through in time, and in the end they were able to just sort of focus their efforts, the blue team, on one problem at a time, which, considering they were in a bit of a hole at that point, was always going to be key if they were going to come back from that, and they have, I think. Champions of Nafarat still active as well. Rohan Pikes routing, and with the loss of their general, that is going to be the end of Dorwinion, I think. The elite bodyguard units are breaking as well, never a good sign. And with Rhudaur also gone, a victory over on this side of the field, which I wasn't expecting after the disaster with the cavalry, but they kept their nerve, the blue team, and I feel as though for that alone they may very well deserve the victory here. Khan as well, like, he may have played poorly in the early game, not really using his cavalry to maximum effect, but he recovered pretty well. Ultimately, you'd have to say it's still probably a net negative for Khan, but a lot of players wouldn't have been able to recover from that situation, and he did. So credit to him for that. The trolls still making a nuisance of themselves behind enemy lines. I think Harad and the Lothlorien forces that are further back are going to have to try and deal with them first and foremost, and then try and form more of a united front against what's left over here. Meanwhile, the Cariscaladhon's Guardians are here, able to get their pikes down. They are surrounded though, so that is going to be a problem. They're taking damage from ranged units as well. Uruk-hai crossbowmen firing away across the river, which also could be a problem. Harad are going to move forward here, but this... Uruk-hai crossbowmen, Hiri Peng, Elves of the Elven King. It's a very close battle, this, and it's going to be decided quickly, actually. I actually think maybe if Lothlorien and Harad move forwards here too aggressively, that could be the end of them. With crossbows and elite elven archers ready to tee off on them. Cairn Amroth Rangers are shooting as well. I mean, I still think with all this cavalry, as soon as they have a sort of free gap to sort of slither on through here, they're going to be able to get in and amongst all of these ranged units, and that should, in theory, be that. If they can take away all of the ranged support, but Elven King's Palace Guard coming forward in melee. Cariscaladhon's Guardians still the target of most of the ranged units, which to be fair means the bulk of the forces which are heading towards them will not be. All of the archers need to forget about the Cariscaladhon's Guardians for a second and start focusing down the Trollmen units for Harad, I think, and maybe the Watchers of the Golden Wood. Nazkai are just getting overwhelmed at this point, and yeah, here comes Sin with the cavalry. He's now going to use them, I think, pretty effectively. Well, he needs to be careful of the Elven King's Palace Guard. There goes Haldir, slain by an Elder Council volley. Having 34 Elven King's Palace Guard in the late game can be decisive, especially with crossbow support. The Rangers, they still have their bows out as well, though. Having a healthy unit of Rangers as well is perhaps the biggest late game asset you can have, especially in a fight where they're going to be useful like this, condensed. Yeah, and again, I think the problem may be that they do have range support here, the red team, but I don't think it's going to. I don't think they have enough of it. And more to the point, they've had to commit forward all of their melee units to the front line, and that's going to leave their ranged units without any sort of shield from the cavalry as it moves forward. Mahud Beast Hunters are there. Yeah, I think the blue team are going to be able to pull this out, but it has been very close. And there was a danger there in the late game. If Mirkwood and Isengard had just a little bit more, either ranged or melee, they could have done that. But in the end, just not quite enough. Some cavalry moving over the hills as well. Some Chieftain's Vanguard. Khan going to make a nuisance of themselves once again, doing what they can. What are they going to go after here? Greenwood Rangers. Yeah, they what are they doing back there? Mirkwood must have forgot about them. Mirkwood must have forgot about them in the backfield. I can only assume that's the only reason why they haven't been committed forward sooner. And again, that's a poor mistake if that's the case. That could have been the difference maker. Rangers can be so effective, as the Cairn Amroth Rangers are going to be showing in this battle here. I'm actually kind of... I don't know who had the... Because I'm tempted to say Mirkwood actually had the worst game on the field. Horns made of clay. Because at the very least, Khan were able to recover. Mirkwood's mistakes, I think, have been strung out across the whole battle. And they may have been more minor than the cavalry disaster that Khan had, but they have added up here. They've really added up. Yeah, there go Isengard. Finally falling away. And a very close battle indeed. Yeah, within 3%. That doesn't surprise me at all. For a 4v4 field battle where there was so much cavalry, that's a remarkably close margin. Hiri Peng there. Still the Chieftain's Vanguard of what's left of Khan, still performing a vital service, which, yeah, I'm going to say, for that reason, Khan didn't have the worst game on the field. I'm instead going to award that to Mirkwood, unfortunately, for Beast Mode 70. Best game, however, has to go to Sin. Use of the Mumakil alone. Good use of the cavalry. Made the most of his infantry in spite of the fact that it was being pressured from multiple angles. The blue team were in a real rut at that point. And with a little bit of help from his allies, he was able to turn that around. Very interesting battle this, though, spread out across a really wide area. I mean, it was rough. It was rough for the blue team early on because Eclipse, he was in a terrible situation, really, and considering he got that many kills, he was able to do a very good job. Lothlorien, I think, were actually kind of lucky in this situation. They were able to... The way they deployed was very strange. They weren't really punished for that, but part of that can be put down to the fact that elves are quicker than the Uruk-hai on foot, so maybe Viper action can be forgiven for that. Obviously Khan, early on suffered losses, and it really was a tale of two halves in many ways. Early on, the blue team didn't really see the battle going in their favour at all. However, in the second half, I think the red team just weren't able to carry on that momentum, to be honest with you. Dorwinion may have a low amount of kills, but that's not too surprising. They were opposite a full cavalry army, so they're never really going to get the most kills. And they were never really able to fully engage in melee, and by the time they did, the battle had already turned against the red team. So it's kind of not Dorwinion's fault in that regard. And to be fair, the red team as a whole didn't really do too badly. I mean, but they had the blue team surrounded. If they had coordinated maybe just a little better, I feel as though they could have gone on to win this battle. And again, individual units like the Greenwood Rangers needed to be far closer to the front line far sooner than they were. You know, Isengard Ballista needed to be using Flaming Shot. Little things like this adding up to make a big difference. And obviously Sin, I think, has to go down as MVP. But all of his good play would have been for naught if the red team had just utilised their resources just a little bit better, I think. Meanwhile, let's see what did the damage for Sin. Black Serpents, Cavalry in general, Hashari Shadows, yeah. I mean, Mumakil getting 520. Brilliant performance from the Mumakil, brilliant performance from the Harad mounted units in general. They were really the MVPs for Harad here. The rest of the units were just here to do a job on the front line and hold. And they did that well, to be fair. One of the units of Trollmen filling their boots for kills as well against probably lower tier Rhudaur forces. But yeah, the infantry was just there to keep the shape of the engagement. The cavalry was there to be the hammer to the anvil. So yeah, I think that's a very good performance. Again, nice to see the Mumakil used well as well. It's been a little while since we've seen that. But yeah, big thank you to Sin for sending this battle to me. Big thank you to all the players for being a part of this battle as well. Again, a very, very interesting one on a really neat map as well. I like this one. I like the fact that the deployment zones are so close together. It really does force an engagement. It forces people to think quickly on their feet, and some players kind of melt in the face of doing that. Sin is not one of those. And a lot of the players in this lobby, to be fair, aren't one of those either. In spite of the fact that Eclipse was one of the first armies to fall, he at least knew what he was doing right from the outset and did the best with what he had available to him. So yeah, I'm not sure what will be next. It may be another one of these. It may be one of these sort of more unified theme battles that I got sent as well. I think Engsvitz was actually the one who sent me 2 of them, and I also got sent one from Eclipse as well on a fixed Care Andros. Which may be a good place to go from there. Obviously, I won't be able to get through all of these before Bannerlord releases, interestingly enough, so we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds for that. And of course, we'll have to wait and see what the future holds with regards to the amount of time I'm going to be able to put into this, because of course, if everyone gets locked down, I will be able to do a little bit more with regards to the channel, but of course, wouldn't place too much stock in that. I feel as though it's just going to... well, we'll see. Again, I can't really predict what's going to happen with regards to that anyway. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.